show you how all these requirements are met with your zoning code. There's nothing we're proposing tonight that doesn't fit your existing CBD zone. And talk a little bit more about your goals as a community. So to go through the revisions to the plan, Sari Lekkonen, who's with MA Architects, will go through each of those aspects.
Hi everyone again. As Rick mentioned, I'm with MA Architects. It's Sunny Day. And you can do that, that's fine. Yeah, thank you. So to illustrate what was done in the last month or so, the plan at the bottom is our original proposal, which is a larger, longer building, mixed-use building. And the proposal on top is what we're here with today. It has been broken into two buildings. We have a 30-foot gap between a shorter mixed-use building here, a completely commercial building here, and then a little over a 30-foot gap again to the shown building. That's our neighbor. This is the previous plan, which is one continuous building all the way here. So the length of the building has been reduced. The next item that I would like to talk about is massing, and we have worked on that too, and obviously the breaking of the building into two makes a pretty drastic change to what was here before. So we have a smaller two-story commercial building, like right here. It's separated from the mixed-use three-story building that is now shorter. We have the same kind of articulation as we've shown before, with gables and balconies and projections, so that the building reads as a smaller piece, really, kind of when you're walking down the street. The sidewalk zone here, I thought with this diagram I could kind of illustrate that a little bit. So here's the corner of Highland Avenue and Fort Thomas Avenue. We're creating a plaza here. We have a little covered area underneath the tower here that connects to the retail part. There's a trellised walk here, there's a covered walk here, there's a trellised walk here, and here's a retail area that kind of projects from the building. And in front of all of this is a public sidewalk. And then next to that is this commercial building that has a room for potentially a restaurant here, sit-down restaurant with an outdoor terrace where you can, it's recessed here, so there's a little terrace area, and upstairs is reserved for a potential office user. These are street elevations on, this is on Highland Avenue. So here's the corner of Fort Thomas Avenue. So here's this kind of a tower element that we have placed at the corner of Fort Thomas and Highland. And then our building going down Highland Avenue steps down a full story, so that the three-story building becomes really a two-story building. Here, when you turn from Highland to Woodland Place, is our building as 2 stories of residential over a partially underground garage. The detailing of our residential or mixed-use building is similar to what we proposed last time. So our proposed materials are brick, a couple different colors of brick that kind of connect to the Tower Park historic structures, and then we also have a stone masonry material that we're using here. We have a trellis treatment for some of the walks. So here's a covered walk. There's something that's under the balconies and under the building base that's completely covered, and then there are trellised walks. We have a little planting strip, balconies that are recessed and then provide kind of this connection from the residential units to the streets. We have dormers and master bedrooms. We have projecting window bays in living rooms. And these projecting gables provide these living rooms in the units that get light from 3 directions and kind of provide then to the outside kind of light to the street and kind of a vivid, vibrant environment. Here's an illustration of the commercial building that we're proposing. And underneath it, you can see here's kind of a floor plan idea of Fort Thomas Avenue here. And our commercial building here steps back so that there's room for a restaurant terrace. And then there's a gap between this building and the mixed-use building next to it. And here we provide a kind of a nice pedestrian garden area that's available for public use. We have some articulation in this building that's projecting bays, storefront, a canopy over entrance to here. We're thinking this would be great as a kind of an operable window wall system so that you can completely open the restaurant to the outside. Just kind of great place to spend time, summer nights, downtown Fort Thomas. The material probably is proposed to be brick and some metal accents with it, so it connects to the historic downtown and the commercial buildings there. Building height is something that we also adjusted, so this section illustrates it. We're now exactly at 50 feet from grade to the top of the ridge, and so that conforms to the zoning requirement. And we achieve this by adjusting our ceiling heights a little bit and adjusting the roof pitch. So that lowered our building a little bit. I've been talking about this covered walk a lot. So the building steps back and fronts Fort Thomas Avenue. So part of the building, most of the building is really 11 feet back from the face of the gable that's here, and the zone in between is the covered walk. Then we have a little green strip, then we have public sidewalk, and then we have Fort Thomas Avenue. So that section kind of illustrates how the public realm of this area also is going to be worked out. And on Fort Thomas Avenue, what these new buildings would do is create this commercial corridor that has now two sides, much like Monmouth Avenue, for instance. So we have our existing bank building right here, the height of the existing bank building illustrated here, but we have the city hall, et cetera, on this side. And then on the other side, we would now have this building with commercial activity on first floor, residential above, and then further down the street, there'd be the commercial building. This is the first floor plan of our building. And to orient you, north is to the right. This is Fort Thomas Avenue, Highland Avenue, Woodland Place. This is the site of the current BB&T Bank building. So this is kind of the extent of our site here. And the setbacks, since we're reviewing this for zoning issues, I will walk you through the setbacks. We have a kind of a side yard setback here that is 29 feet at its smallest and almost 32 feet at its widest. It's a drive in here. Both buildings on Fort Thomas Avenue are really set back about 5 feet from the property line, but then the building is actually, most of the building is really set back 16 feet from the property line. And the property line is kind of on the north, outside the sidewalk edge. So really from the building all the way to the curb is 25 feet overall distance. That kind of is the same kind of distances that I provided here for the commercial building also. And at the corner of Highland and Fort Thomas, we're creating a little plaza. The curb here is in its existing location, so we still have the street parking here and on Highland Avenue as well. We have a setback on Highland that varies a little bit. It's like essentially it's 5 feet from the building to the lot line, but the property line does a funky little jog here. So at its smallest, it's 3'6", but it's still at the same distance from the sidewalk. It appears as if it's the 5-foot setback all the way through. Another thing that we did after last round was pull the building back in a little bit from Woodland Place. So it's pushed in an additional 5 feet, which gives us enough room from the curb to the building to fit the trash truck on the trash service days. And it gives you more room to kind of queue and make your turn from when you come from the garage. So that setback there is 15 feet, and there's a little projecting gable here that has 13'6" setback. So it again varies a little bit. The last setback issue that is here is the buffer yard next to the residential district, and it is at 25-foot minimum. That's we move the trash container here, or the trash enclosure, so that we conform to that 25-foot requirement. On the floor plan, you can see the yellow areas are commercial footprints. So most of, like all of that Fort Thomas Avenue frontage is commercial activity. We have a through building walk here that connects the back parking area to, that's designated for the commercial functions, to the street. And also, this is a way to get to the residential entrance of this building. The residential areas here are illustrated in blue. We have an elevator, stair, 2 units at the Woodland Place end of the building that are elevated because the grade goes down. This is the new completely commercial building, so this is the footprint that could be used for a restaurant, and we're able to get higher ceiling heights in this building, which are desirable for a restaurant tenant because of it being a freestanding structure. And also an elevator, 2 stairs, all that good stuff that you need for a potential office tenant upstairs. The experience of what this development would do to downtown has lots of landscaping in it. So we have all these street trees, obviously, that would be planted per the Fort Thomas streetscape standards. We are providing this plaza area that will have planters in it. There's a little green strip between the building and Highland. There's additional green planting areas between the building and Fort Thomas Avenue. Then we have this lovely 30-foot wide park and connecting walk here that has this restaurant terrace next to it. And also the parking area, we're providing this commercial parking that is able to circulate, which is critical for a commercial tenant. And we have these planting strips in here, and so the view to the parking from, for instance, these units up here on 2nd and 3rd floor, you look at the trees and the green buffer that's between the parking and the Woodland Place neighborhood. And the residential entrance area also has its own little garden zone, which is going to be landscaped nicely. Our residential floor plan, this is the 2nd floor. There are a few unit types that vary from 1,700 to 2,550 or 2,600 square feet. Every unit has a projecting bay that is, when you see the exterior illustrations, it's that gable. That's a living space. There's a big connected living room, kitchen, dining area, like lots of open space. Then we have a nice master suite and a 2nd bedroom and sometimes a study and things like that. We have large balconies in all of the units and 10-foot ceilings for all of them. At the end of the building here towards Woodland Place, building steps down, so this is the top floor, and on that floor we do volume ceilings for these 2 units. This is the 2nd floor of the commercial building, which is the office footprint. 3rd floor, very much the same, but of course these end units are not there. And then we have these volume ceiling opportunities in all of the gables and the units. So I've talked about the streetscape a little bit already, but here's a kind of an enlarged plan that illustrates maybe a little clearer what's going on. So if we start from the plaza here, we're creating this plaza area that connects. Here's the walk through the building. Here's a commercial tenant space. They can connect to a terrace. And there's a covered area here under the tower element. We have a trellis walk that leads to this under the gable as the entrance to the building, a little canopy feature here. And then under the balconies of the units above, we have a covered walk in front of these commercial spaces here. And then we have trellised area again, so you get like different degrees of shade and protection for the walk. And at the end of the building, we're projecting the tenant space all the way out to that 5-foot setback. We talked about the setbacks overall too, so this is 25-foot distance from the building to the curb. We have an 11-foot distance from the building to the edge of the covered walk. We have 6 feet of planting in that 5-foot setback, and I believe that that edge of the sidewalk is about 1 foot out from the lot line. And then we have street trees, and we will use the Fort Thomas planting standards for the green space. We're planning to provide bike racks in strategically viable places and make it possible to bike here and leave your vehicle. And then here's kind of our enlarged plan of our green strip and then how the terrace of the restaurant could potentially tie into that. We have also, I think I forgot to mention in a previous slide, we have widened the drive access to 24 feet at both locations, both the garage drive and the drive to the back parking area. This is to conform with the zoning requirements.
The last change we made to the plan responds to many issues that were raised by the residents of Woodland Place. And I've had probably 4 meetings or more with the residents, and they were very helpful to help me understand the issues. We've gone through all kinds of iterations, and we had to land on this one, but there's a big change that will make addressing the issues more palatable. First of all, this was the original plan. It only gave us 8.6 feet to the property line. What you want to point out here is the grocer accounting building is right here. So the neighborhood has experienced a commercial user there for many years. It's 2,300 square feet. Parking lot that generates 15 round trips a day, and during the tax season, probably double that. So what we want to do is reduce the size of the footprint on Woodland, and now we have it almost imitating the face of the grocer building. Now, the reason why we moved it to 13.6 feet from the property line is so we can create this space here that does several things. Number one, it helps improve the views for safety reasons coming out of this garage and going into the garage. It also allows us to be set back like the rest of the homes on the street. In fact, it's further back than many of the homes on Woodland. Some other things that we've done is we've reduced the size of the residential, so now we just have 18 units instead of 24, and our residential parking accommodates 38 cars, and based upon our other residential projects, that will generate 18 units will generate around 21 round trips a day. Because our target audience are retired people, senior citizens, professionals that are still working but don't have a schedule that they have to go out of the garage at a certain time. So won't be people rushing out here at 8 o'clock to go to work. Another thing we've done is we've increased the number of visitor spaces from 3 to 9, because one of the issues of the people at Woodland was, hey, we don't want people coming to see the people who live there and park on our street. So besides having this great big public parking lot here, there'll be plenty of space here for people that might have an occasional kid in town from college or a dinner party and so forth. The next change we made was we created more stacking space for cars. So once you come out of this garage door and into this visitor parking area, there's room for 4 cars to stack between the curb and this door. Because sometimes when everybody's running out to take their kid to school in the morning, there might be 1 or 2 cars stacking here. So this will allow people in the garage to wait and not be a nuisance to the residents. But more importantly, if people live here and they know this is going on for 10, 15 minutes, they're going to wait and go to Kroger at 9. There's no reason to come out and be involved in this congestion anyway. So, but we did accommodate that concern. And then most importantly, this new setback creates 27.6 feet between the building face and the curb. And the way Rumpke is going to do the trash pickup is the same kind of truck that they use right now that backs everybody up when they're picking up the neighbor's trash. You got to wait for this guy to finish. This truck will drive in back in here, and the truck length will fit between the face of the building and the curb. So he can go into the garage, go to the trash room, roll the 500-pound dumpster to the back of the truck will lift it up, and then he'll dump and be able to turn out into Highland. The truck wants to keep the 24-foot apron because he can have enough space now to get out without impacting the residents parking here. We won't have to put no parking signs on these spaces here because of the way we've given up space, moved the building back, and tried to address this trash removal issue that was important to the neighbors. And then the next most important thing is, I think, is what we'll be able to create for the neighborhood. This hillside now, instead of having a retaining wall and a surface parking lot, now will be a professionally landscaped hillside that can be a gateway into this neighborhood. It'll be planted by us, maintained by the association, and it will be a nice welcoming gateway to the community. Also, these units here will be residential. This is not a commercial side of our building. These are people who are sitting out of their balconies, windows full of light, and people interacting with the neighborhood as residents to, again, respect the character of the neighborhood. So, this buffer zone, the buffer zone we've already talked about, but we view that as an asset, not just for the residents, to get rid of all the honeysuckle and bamboo and all the junk in there, and put in some professionally landscaped amenities that will benefit the neighborhood as well as the people who live in the upper units. So, we spent a lot of time together, and I wish we could come up with a solution, but this is the best one for the project, and I think in the end for the community as well. The other options to pull trash out of the Highland here with the door, we looked at this before, and the trash door on this steep slope didn't work for Rumpke, and a big complicated driveway into the neighborhood here just took up too much parking in here to make it feasible as well. So, and it didn't work for Rumpke either because the elevation actually gets higher as you go up the street. So it was hard to roll the dumpster out that way as well. So anyway, to conclude, we'd like to work with you to build a new town center. We have assembled a team that can do that. And I want to introduce David Birdsell, who has 25 years in the retail leasing and retail management and development business, who just like to give his overview on the potential of this site.
Thanks, Rick. As Rick said, my name is David Birdsall. I own a company called 360 Property Partners. I've been involved in retail real estate for about 25 years. Spent a lot of time doing everything from big box ground up development to mall redevelopment to big mixed use projects. And as retail has morphed with the onset of the internet, we are now focused and changed our focus to kind of back to where I started leasing small shopping centers because that is the future of it, and we are into neighborhood retail because we think that's the last mile, and we want to be in the last mile in the neighborhood. This project, when Rick introduced me to it, I only look at things strictly from a leasability standpoint, and not only the leasability from day one, but the leasability in year 10. In other words, retail is always going to change. We have to be able to constantly be able to lease it. We have to have leasing optionality. This meets all of our criteria: great demographic, walkable community, dense neighborhood population, well located, and major employment centers nearby. So with retail being all about experience, that's what retail is today. You're kind of on the spectrum. You're either the last mile, or you're either you're the last mile, which is your neighborhood, or you're in the experience end of the business, which could be as extreme as Newport on the Levee. It's all about it. Here we have a combination of both because we give the experience of a great community in a small neighborhood retail center. So we're very excited. We think this offers a great opportunity. We're doing similar projects in Kentucky. We're also doing the old Remke Center in downtown Fort Mitchell, which is now Braxton. It's a small tenant down there, and we think this is just going to be another great thing in our portfolio. So, thank you.
Thanks, David. Then the rest of the team, besides Greiwe Development, is North American Properties and SibcyCline, and our three companies have been working together for the last 12 years, doing projects like this in cities like Marymount, Hyde Park, Montgomery will be next, and hopefully this community. And we know how to appeal to this market, and this is especially exciting because this is a generational community. People don't leave here. Their kids, their grandkids, everybody stays. And so we like to offer a housing type so a generation can stay here. And it's flats, everybody lives on a level, there's no stairs, every door is handicapped accessible, ADA requirements are met, so it's a really great product for the plus 60 crowd. So that's our team. We'd like to work with you to do the new town center, and we're looking forward to answering any questions you might have.
Thank you. Okay, at this time we have some staff reports. We have Kevin, who's our building inspector and zoning administrator. We've heard Kevin. Followed by Frank Twiggs, who's a senior engineer safety consultant. Who tells us about traffic, I believe. So, all right, Kevin, go ahead.
Thanks, Dan. This development is slightly changed. The square footage now is 21,000 square foot of retail, office, and now a restaurant. The building 1 is proposed to be 12,500 square foot with 2 floors of residential living above. Building 2 will be 4,300 square feet of restaurant on the first floor and 4,200 square foot of office above. I have provided some history as to what is currently in place. So my job essentially is to look for conformance to our zoning code and comprehensive plan. Initially, in this particular zone, the requirements are a little different than most zones. Most zones, we have specific setback requirements from property lines. The central business district zone, for the most part, is based on a development plan, and therefore our planning commission reviews setbacks with the development plan. So there's not a specific setback for the buildings themselves. However, there is a height restriction of 50 feet. As stated by the applicant, he has brought that height in compliance with our central business district zones. For all intents and purposes, we also referenced the comprehensive plan, which was a long process that we just completed. The comprehensive plan did make some significant discussion as it relates to the central business district. I have provided the planning commission with some excerpts that are most applicable from that comprehensive plan for their review. The main concepts of what are in the comprehensive plan are, for all intents and purposes, met with the proposed development. Obviously, the planning commission has latitude with many aspects of that. Some of these are interpretive and some of these are concrete. That being said, it appears to be, from a staff level, in general compliance with the comprehensive plan. That being said, there are very specific developmental controls that have to be met through our zoning ordinance, and I'm going to go through some of those now. Specifically, off-street parking. The current proposal has now 4,500 ground parking spots. The requirement is 18 units is 2 per unit, which is essentially 36, as Mr. Greiwe noted, 9 guest parking spaces to round that out. That will be underground. Access from Woodland for residential purposes only. From a commercial aspect, there is a breakdown of uses is how the parking is calculated. For the lion's share of this space, it is 1 parking space per 300 square feet. In doing calculations for all this, on the surface, there is 85 parking spaces required. There are stipulations in our zoning code that allow for shared use requirements. The purposes of that are, for example, a restaurant and an office space might not have the same time frame of visitors. Obviously, your office space is generally going to be 8 to 5. Restaurants, obviously, you're going to have some evening traffic. So there are calculations in our zoning code that talk about percentages that I have to calculate and determine what is the ultimately required number of parking spaces. After that calculation, I have come to the number of 60 parking spaces are required for the site. Mr. Greiwe mentioned 40 parking spaces are provided on the private site and 16 on-street parking. For purposes of zoning, we only calculate parking on private space. So essentially they have 40 parking spaces that they're providing. That being said, there are some language in our comprehensive plan that talks to parking in the central business district. Specifically, there's language that talks about flexibility in parking requirements, including allowances for shared parking and off-site arrangements. It also talks about, in our comprehensive plan, that specifically the location and connections of existing parking spaces on a district-wide basis and determine the need for more parking based on goals of future development in the district. Public parking spaces need to be easy to find, and visitors to the area and find a place to park. It also notes again, encourages shared parking behind buildings and along secondary streets from those fronting North Fort Thomas. That being said, it is something that our Planning Commission parking, they have the latitude to grant, they have the ability to grant latitude for parking specifically as one of their allowances. The city has been looking at parking in the central business district, and specifically for this particular site, there are some underutilized spots currently across the street behind the Highland building that the city owns. The city owns as many as 31 spots back there within 500 foot of the development. Our shared parking requirements talk about proximity within 500 feet, and there is some additional parking there that is underutilized that could be considered as part of a finding of fact, I guess, if they supported this ultimately. That being said, if they were to consider, if the Planning Commission is to consider this, these findings could include also public parking on street. The fact that there is 16 public parking spots adjacent to this property, folks will obviously use them, so that could be a consideration. The city-owned public parking, as I just mentioned, could be a consideration as a balance of some of these parking spots. The Planning Commission could also say you need to add parking, you need to add additional provisions, or another option could be conditional approval of some sort that might say, obviously the restaurant is probably going to be the most imposing of those spaces as it relates to parking, and perhaps require a parking study associated with the approval. So those are just some of the options that the Planning Commission may have. Those are on your last page of considerations for this particular issue. Moving on, access. Obviously, we have with the last proposal there was multiple proposals specifically to the access point. Obviously, those have been streamlined. In this particular case, there has been a parking study that Frank will discuss a little bit more in depth as it relates to those access points. One aspect that is noted in our zoning code is that the access point from Highland Avenue on Woodland should be 100 foot based on the language in our zoning code. That being said, the parking study, there can be additional discussions as it relates to that from the parking study. I'm sorry, the traffic study. The other item of note is 24 foot, that was deficient on the last proposal, was a 24-foot access width. This is, it does appear to be concrete. That has been modified on the North Fort Thomas side and does appear to be needed on the Woodland side.
Before you move on from that, I thought when they made their presentation just a couple minutes ago, they said the Woodland side may expand in 2024.
Okay, that's my mistake.
If somebody could confirm that.
After meeting with Rumpke and them showing the radius of the turns of their trucks, we wanted to keep the curb cut at 24, so the people who live across the street wouldn't have to lose their street parking.
Moving on, street loading and unloading. Based on the modified square footage of 21,000 square feet, the existing businesses must have 3 unloading spots. The proposal shows an oversized one for unloading. Perhaps considerations for this might be additional signage for specific unloading spots on the street, as is in many of our other zones. Our other zones, you see, we all have seen other vehicles unloading at various points of the day. If that is considered, the Planning Commission does have the latitude to make exception to this particular requirement as well, and that could be one consideration as to approval if considered. Trash disposal, the plan has been modified. The last plan did show non-compliance with the dumpster area. This is in compliance with this proposal, the 25-foot setback for screening on the trash disposal was into the minimum screening requirements, and this would be 25 foot as it relates to screening. Some of the other, continuing on with the developmental controls, lighting, it is recommended and actually considered that there is a group that will do a photometric study of the proposed site. The Planning Commission should consider this as a requirement in the Stage 2 development plan if they consider this project. Screening, there is a requirement from a central business district zone to the residential zone of 50 feet. The Planning Commission does have the latitude to decrease that by 1/2, which is 25 foot. This should also be a consideration as it relates, if this project is considered, to decrease that to 25 feet. I also have I also wanted to reinforce what Ron had stated as it relates to the design review board. Many of the aspects that we haven't discussed this evening but may come up are under the purview of our design review board, specifically facades, coloration, landscaping, things of that nature that we won't be discussing tonight. One other note, the proposed plan does appear to be in compliance with the ratio of residential to commercial space. There are some minimum requirements there. So that's the requirements of the central business district. There are also requirements of the Stage 1 plan that is submitted. Most of these items have been met, have been submitted. I have made modifications to our document just with specifically the document I provided the Planning Commission. It's more specific to the sizes and that have been proposed with the new proposal. The couple items of note as it relates to the Stage 1 requirements. Are the 5-foot setback, as noted by Sari. It does get a little bit closer than that. At the closest point is that 5 foot. Once again, the Planning Commission does have the latitude for any setback proposed. A couple other items of note: the developer has asked for latitude as it relates to a detailed plan at this time for the utilities. Obviously, that's a significant cost associated with it. This is certainly a recommendation that this be submitted in the stage 2 plan, and is not necessarily uncommon. Also, I have asked that as a consideration, if the planning commission were to consider this, that the confirmation of all the public utilities are in place. In addition, the developer has asked for a little bit of latitude as it relates to stage 1 plan for landscaping, specific landscaping requirements. They have provided and shown landscaping in this plan, and this should be a consideration that a detailed plan be submitted with the stage 2 development plan. At this time, that is all I have. I would certainly entertain any questions at this time, or I can pass it along to Frank.
Thank you, Kevin.
Before Frank gets started, can we turn the AC off? Make it just a little bit warmer in here.
Thank you. We reviewed the revised traffic impact study for the Fort Thomas Town Center mixed-use project that's located at the northwest corner of the intersection of North Fort Thomas and Highland Avenue. So the objective of this report was to document existing traffic conditions and patterns and evaluate the potential impacts of the proposed development on the surrounding transportation network. So a little bit of back information. Fort Thomas Avenue is a minor arterial. The traffic was counted in 2017, and it had an average of 5,775 vehicles per day. Highland Avenue is a major collector, and it had an average daily traffic when it was counted in 2015 of 8,574 vehicles per day. Just to note for the traffic impact study, for the purposes of the study, traffic that is generated from the existing uses on the site, which consist of a vacated bank building, a vacated residence / commercial house, a restaurant, and a couple of small office buildings. That traffic was not taken out or removed from the existing volumes. So even though post-development that those buildings would not be there, that traffic was not removed from the volume. So it was a more conservative approach. So the applicant submitted an updated traffic impact study. It was submitted last week, and it was completed by TEC Engineering. It showed an AM peak volume of 230 trips and a PM peak volume of 194 trips for the entire development. As part of the trip generation review, pass-by trips were calculated for the appropriate land uses. Pass-by trips are from traffic passing the site on an adjacent street or roadway that offers direct access to the site. In this case, pass-by trips are vehicles currently passing the development that would utilize the development upon completion. These trips were subtracted from the total trips generated during the peak periods to give the total number of new trips traveling to the development not currently using the surrounding road network. So per the ITE handbook, which is the Institute of Traffic Engineers, coffee shops, which is one of the uses proposed in this development, have a 50% pass-by percentage for the AM and PM. Sit-down restaurants, which is also a proposed use for this development, have a percentage of 47% for just the PM. So this results in a revised AM peak of new trips of 130 vehicles and a revised PM peak of new trips of 140. TEC has also indicated that existing movements from the surface lot on North Fort Thomas Avenue will require special considerations because of the lack of appropriate sight distance when looking left or right. It has the appropriate stopping sight distance for the vehicles traveling on North Fort Thomas Avenue to see that vehicle and stop. And some of these special considerations consist of signage or additional lighting as you approach the intersection. These considerations would need to be reviewed as part of the stage 2 submittal.
So they performed two studies. They performed the capacity analysis, which is basically timing, and they performed a queuing analysis of the intersections. This included Fort Thomas Avenue and Highland. It included Highland and Woodland. It included North Fort Thomas and the development surface lot. At Fort Thomas Avenue and Highland, at this intersection, when comparing the no build to the build scenarios, multiple approaches see increases in delay, and some see degradations to the level of service. The approaches most impacted by the added development traffic are the eastbound and the southbound approaches in both the AM and PM peaks. Though there are delay increases, all levels of service remain within acceptable levels for the 2020 scenario. In the 2030 AM scenario, the build traffic changes the level of service from a D, as it exists today, to an E. It adds 7 seconds of delay for each individual vehicle. In the 2030 PM scenario, the build traffic changes the level of service again from a D as it exists today. And this is the exact same grades as you get in school. A is the best, F is the worst. It goes from a D to an E by adding, it adds 8 seconds to the PM. That's the southbound approach. In the AM scenario, on the eastbound approach, the level of service was already 2 seconds. It currently is already 2 seconds away from being a level of service E, and this development does push it over that to a level of service E, and that's just for the AM. For the PM, the build traffic is just 1.2 seconds over the threshold for E, but it does push it over to an E. For Highland and Woodland Place, there's no adverse impacts. For North Fort Thomas and the development service lot, there's no adverse impacts. From the queuing perspective, overall queuing comparisons between the no build and build scenarios show no significant increases. In each scenario, eastbound Highland Avenue does queue from North Fort Thomas Avenue to at least Woodland. But the addition of development traffic adds no more than 2 car lengths to this queue. The proposed development is not expected to create any further queuing issues. The traffic impact study does not specifically address the median on North Fort Thomas Avenue, but modifications would be necessary to the median to provide full access at the proposed location on the north side of the development. Additionally, because the development would remove 2 curb cuts on North Fort Thomas Avenue, portions of the flush paver median could be reconstructed to add additional landscaping. One thing that was part of this revise is that the development does propose enough left turns from North Fort Thomas Avenue into the surface lot to warrant a left turn lane. However, it's stated in the document, and I would concur with the opinion, that it's not recommended to the expected loss of on-street traffic, as well as the queuing analysis was performed, and there is not an excessive queue that backs up from the vehicle stop to make a left-hand turn into the surface lot. Any work that's completed within the right-of-way of North Fort Thomas Avenue will require an encroachment permit from the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. That would include any signage. And in conclusion, the report does indicate that there will be minimal additional impacts to the surrounding network of the proposed site. And the capacity analysis surrounding the site showed increases to intersection queuing, but again, this was minimal with 2 car lengths or less. And Chairman, that concludes my review of the TIS.
Thank you, staff. Okay, this time we'll let our developer, do you have any questions for these staff people or comments? No. Thank you. All right, now it's the fun part, the open forum part. Before we get to that, how many of you people participated in our comprehensive plan surveys and process that took like 18 months? Just curious. How?
I never knew there was a survey until the
They were online, Julie hid on the front marquee of the city building, all that type of thing. Okay, how many looked at the new information in this proposal on our website, city website? Okay, so you're pretty well informed, that's good. All right, so like we did last time, we'll ask if there's any group spokesman to kind of do it first. We're going to ask you to go forward to the microphone, because Julie likes you to speak well into that microphone, slowly and loud, so we can record it and transcribe it in the notes. So with that, who would like to be first? I have a hand. Somebody's going to be first. That young lady there. Please identify yourself and where you live.
I actually don't live in Fort Thomas. My name is Jennifer Sierra, and I own Framed NKY, located at 103 North Fort Thomas Avenue. And Fort Thomas people are amazingly loyal, I will say, since I've acquired the business in September. That business has been around. It was formerly Bowman's, and it was in Fort Thomas for decades. And I was a client there years ago when it was located around the corner and you had to go through the back door of a building. It was like some discreet little place. It's like a drug deal going on or something, I don't know. But it was great and the service was great. It's still a great business. And I just want to say, before I go on, how grateful I am that the people of Fort Thomas have supported that business, and it is really a staple in the community. And a lot of people have come in and thanked me for purchasing it, and it's made me feel like I made a good decision in buying the business. But one of the things that interested me in the business was the potential of this development. And I really didn't know much about the details other than the first version. And I knew it would go through changes, obviously, as people had more input and it was presented to the public. This is the first time I'm seeing this version. I'm still very interested in being a part of this development. The building I'm currently located in is not good really for our business to continue to grow. We've kind of maxed out the space, and the vision I have for our company is not really going to work in the current location. And we're in a little house on the avenue there, and it's a charming little home, but it doesn't really suit our needs any longer. And one of the things that I'm liking about this is that it's at ground level, and my clients, who some of them are elderly, come in, and right now they have to climb a couple of stairs to get into our gallery, and it's kind of an inconvenience, and I'm always afraid that somebody's going to fall. Secondly, I would like to say that one of my visions for the company is to have a beautiful gallery space that's larger than the one we have now, where people could come in and actually rent the place out after hours for fundraisers and cocktail hours and little private parties in a beautifully appointed space. So I'm not looking at like just keeping it as a frame shop and small art gallery. I'm looking at kind of expanding it to welcome people into a community space. And we could really fit the mold here because I'm also expanding the retail aspect of our business, carrying more, local artists and really trying to promote the local art in the area. So I know, I've heard, it's funny, our business is, it's like, we're kind of like a bar. People come in and they sit down and they start telling you, oh, have you heard about the development? And I've heard some clients of ours have said that they don't like it. Mostly the people that live on the street, I guess it's Woodlawn behind us. And I totally get that with the traffic flow and everything. If I lived back there, I probably wouldn't be real happy about that either. But, I kind of feel like, you gotta give and take a little bit. And if you want your downtown business to kind of grow and flourish, sometimes you have to kind of compromise a little bit. I'm really hopeful that the people that opposed the development will kind of, look to what the development could offer them. The conveniences, maybe, a nicer little coffee shop or, nicer retail, and better ways to support your community and those businesses, tax dollars supporting your community. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Yes, over here.
I'm Ken. Okay, there we go. I'm Ken, and this is my wife, Seal Dorger. We live at 140 Lester Lane in Fort Thomas. We've been a resident for 32 years in Fort Thomas, and we would just encourage you to support this project. I think Greiwe Development is an experienced developer. Obviously they're willing to listen to the comments of the community. I was here at the last meeting, and it seems like they've addressed a lot of those issues. They're flexible, again, just willing to work with the community. They're also backed by pretty deep pockets with North American Property. They're taking on the risk. So I think this combination of expertise and financial strength doesn't come along that often every day. And I would encourage, and I think it would be a mistake for us to pass on this kind of development.
We've seen businesses come and go in our central business district, and I'm sure it puzzles you as it puzzles me. Why can't we just sell more cups of coffee and donuts and pizza and things like that? And things close. And you've seen throughout the Midwest little central business districts that turn into kind of empty ghost towns. You've seen them too in Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. I don't think that would happen here, but already there are some businesses in this area that are empty and closed, and there are no tenants knocking on the door. And what we do have is this opportunity, really a handsome development, and a developer who's, as Ken said, very willing to listen. They've been very intentional about our community and making it look like ours. I've been to Hyde Park in Marymount. I looked around, and those are also very beautiful developments, lush landscaping, and they look like they've been there forever. I know they haven't been. I lived in Hyde Park about 40 years ago, and spent my honeymoon night at the Marymount Inn. So those communities are familiar to me, but they've integrated it so beautifully, and I think that that's something that's happening here as well. So also encourage us not to pass up on that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Benita Frenzel. I'm born, raised, and lived in Fort Thomas predominantly all my life. I'm not totally, as I said to you before, I've never been totally against this. But I do have a couple of aesthetic questions, and I meant to ask before. When you mentioned several times about sitting out in front of the businesses, and there'll be covered areas for it, but you have more trellis area than you do covered area. And I'm just curious why. Because the trellis area on a rainy day, like we've been having a lot this spring, will not promote sitting outside for some of these different businesses, or even just to, not even the business as much as the community effect. Why is there so much trellis versus cover?
So one of the things that we're excited about is when you do modern commercial space, there's all kinds of options. So these could be nano walls that open with heaters, so you can have outdoor, indoor dining, and this part of this restaurant could be a part of the outdoor dining experience, that these outdoor garden with the umbrellas, certainly you can't sit out there in the rain. But if you come down towards the plaza, about 1/3 of the space is covered with, again, an opportunity to open up walls down here, and other parts are trellis, because we're trying to use this articulation of the building to express where it's covered underneath the big, gables here, and where it's trellis in between. So it has to do with the architecture above as well as what's going on at the street level. So as we get tenants like Jennifer who want to accomplish something, we're going to work with them to do that. There's nothing fixed about any of this right now. We're going to organically curate our retail so we can develop these spaces that are great community event centers like she described, as well as places that convene with your friends and family members.
Okay, who else would like to be asking?
Hi, my name is Kelsey Boyd Byers, and I live at 127 North Fort Thomas Avenue, the house to the left of the Third Bank. 4 years ago, Dan Gorman came and talked to me about wanting to buy my house and bulldoze it along with the others next to me, the historical homes, to make an arts and entertainment district with condos, to which I gave what I hope was a kind but firm no. He said the same things that he said at the meeting 2 months ago about being the next Hyde Park or Marymount, and seeing the empty or lived-in storefronts along the Midway District as being a sign of a community in decline. And while I'm sure Dan's intentions are by no means sinister, of course, it was undeniable that at the last meeting there was a visceral reaction from the vast majority of the Fort Thomas residents against the proposed plans for this project, which made me think, what is the major disconnect here? And what I think it boils down to is a misunderstanding about this town's identity. What was said over and over at the last meeting by Fort Thomas residents was that the building and plans proposed do not fit the identity that this town's residents prize so much. The huge draw to Fort Thomas for the overwhelming majority of its residents are 3 S's: the schools, safety, and the small town feel. This is what brings people, and therefore money, in. Not having a successful pizza restaurant, nor that critical mass that I keep hearing about, is not the sign of decline for this community. Other communities, yes, it definitely could be. But this one, no. And that's part of what makes us so special. The extent of the town's grief when a restaurant closes its doors looks a lot like this. Aw, man, they're closing? What a shame. And that's pretty much it. Because that is not where this town's identity nor future lies. What so many of us are desperate for you to hear us say is that by pushing this new identity of a critical mass of business and commerce into the center of Fort Thomas, you will inevitably and inversely be affecting those 3 major draws, which instill in us so much pride: schools, safety, and small town feel. Increased traffic will decrease safety and walkability, especially for our kids. A decrease in walkability and safety will have an inevitable effect on the draw that our town has for great families who value education and safety, leading to a decrease in quality of schools, property values. It's all connected. And last, while on the subject of identity, I think it's really important for you as members of the Planning Commission to know that many Fort Thomas residents see as your identity. I lost track of how many people I heard say almost the same line over and over, young and old, neutral observers, and those very much against your plan, online and in person. The line I kept hearing people say was this: "This is a done deal. It's all about the money with them." I desperately hope this is not true. I hope that your identity as the Fort Thomas Planning Commission is of service and honor, to listen and respond to this community's precious and rare identity of safety, schools, and small town feel. Not the bottom line for your own private business interests and connections. Restore faith in the community of why you are here and what you are about. Please make changes to these proposed plans that will increase the quality of life and identity of this town.
Thank you.
I was bringing that up. For the record, the planning commission people are volunteers. I've served this board for 37 years and haven't gotten one nickel. I get a bottle of water once in a while.
Hello, my name is Neil Lyshak. I'm a resident of 43 Woodland Place. As a resident of Woodland Place, I'm concerned and disappointed. We have repeatedly accepted invitations from Planning Commission member Dan Gorman, Mayor Eric Haas, and developer Rick Greiwe, and attended public meetings such as this to discuss our legitimate concerns over the negative impact that this development will have on our existing residential street. We are tired of voicing our concerns about this project, offering reasonable suggestions or alternatives, receiving assurances that our needs will be addressed, and then repeatedly hearing, well, after consideration, we like your idea, but ours is better because it is better for the future residents of the condos or the benefits of the development overall. We have been meeting with the parties involved in this project throughout the entire year. Dan Gorman presented his plan for the CBD to the residents of Woodland Place in February. This presentation included the outline of not only this project, but as Kelsey mentioned, a second phase of the same size intended to extend further down Fort Thomas Avenue. This rendering also showed the project wrapping around the corner of Highland and onto our street. The entire street voiced our opposition to a portion of the project wrapping onto our street at that time. And Dan assured us that he would take our concerns back to Mr. Greiwe, who in our opinion later seemed surprised by our opposition, as if Mr. Gorman had not mentioned it to him at all. Throughout this process, we have provided our feedback in as positive and helpful way as possible. Multiple neighbors have dedicated countless hours meeting, developing alternative design plans, offering concessions if modifications could be made, hiring babysitters and leaving work early to attend meetings with Mr. Gorman, Mayor Haas, Mr. Greiwe, and others from the city. Every concern has been brushed aside with an explanation that the project, as it is proposed today, is the best option for the developer's goal of bringing this development to Fort Thomas and its future residents. Those future residents are being provided preference over the existing neighborhood. No one is responding to the community's expressed concerns about whether this development is truly the right fit for our CBD. It is not. The commission should not accept it simply because it is what the developer has proposed. What I brought up here is a print of page 188 of the Fort Thomas Community Plan. This plan that was developed with the help of all of you and many others in this room show a solid green line running the entire length of Woodland Place to the corner of Highland Avenue. As noted in Objective 4 on this page, This green line is a buffer intended to protect the existing neighborhoods from impacts of new development. The proposed development directly violates the intent of this buffer and the community plan by placing a parking garage directly on our street. With the parking garage entrance facing our residential street, my neighbors, the Reynolds, Lisa Adams, and others will have headlights shining into their front windows each time a car exits in the morning and the evening. If there is a car alarm going off in the garage, the sound is directed towards our homes. Currently, there are 25 homes in our street. With the addition of 18 condos, the residential traffic entering and exiting our street will naturally increase substantially, creating a safety risk for the hundreds of children and pedestrians who use Lodge Lane to avoid the heavy traffic at the intersection of North Fort Thomas Avenue and Highland Avenue when walking to and from school or just enjoying a walk in our quiet neighborhood community. We have also been informed that the trash for these 18 units will be picked up at the garage entrance at the end of our street. Even with the garage set back, having a trash truck stationed at the end of our street once a week for as long as it takes to pick up 18 units worth of trash is a nuisance to all the residents of Woodland Place and would likely cause further congestion to our narrow street during trash pickup times. Mr. Greiwe suggests that they have addressed our concerns by increasing the setback from the street. Setting the parking garage back farther may help somewhat from an aesthetic perspective, but it does not fully eliminate the overall negative impact of the proposed development. Using handsome materials, as from their website, attractive brick, and planting trees around the garage entrance also does not fully eliminate the impacts of the proposed development. Moving the garage entrance off of our street and combining it with the commercial lot entrance on Fort Thomas Avenue would fully mitigate these negative impacts. Mr. Greiwe has been given a feasible design plan from highly qualified architects that just happen to live on Woodland Place. He has rejected it because it would not be as desirable for condo residents or their ideal parking flow. Again, deprioritizing the existing residents. Even in a last-ditch effort to minimize the impact of this development, Mr. Greiwe was given a design that would allow him to keep the garage entrance on our street, but turned away from our homes, which would help reduce the negative impacts of car lights, sounds, and the speed of cars entering and exiting the garage. He said he liked the idea, but then rejected this proposal based on Rumpke allegedly refusing to move the location of the trash pickup to Highland Avenue. If that is the case, that Rumpke didn't like the idea, shouldn't Mr. Greiwe have the duty to work with Rumpke to figure out an option that would work for all? Why should the residents of Woodland Place have to suffer the impacts of this development and be the ones to put in the time and the creativity to find a mutually acceptable solution? Shouldn't the developer be required to go back to the drawing board and use his resources and connections to find a way to make his proposed design compliant with the community plan? The spirit of the community plan and the intended purpose of the buffer drawn specifically to provide against this type of situation is not represented in the original proposed development and is not represented in this revised plan either. We have been advised by legal counsel that any decision to approve a development that does not comply with the zoning code or the city plan can be appealed to the circuit court within 30 days of the decision by the planning commission. We sincerely hope that we do not have to go there, and that no arbitrary or capricious decision is made by this planning commission tonight. But we feel strongly that the commission should not approve a proposal that puts the safety and well-being of our neighbors in jeopardy in favor of Mr. Gorman, Mr. Greiwe, and the future condo residents. And we will not sit back and let it happen without putting up a fight. Thank you.
The garage issue, because this is something we didn't take lightly. We spent a lot of time on this, actually. Okay, so I don't have all the illustrations, but the first one that the neighborhood came up with involved building a ramp from this elevation up the hillside along this property line and coming out here. There was 2 retaining walls involved, and it was expensive, but more importantly, the distance that it took away from our parking lot made the retail commercial part of this project not feasible. We would be forced to go back to angle parking where we have a dead end. So unless we have a circular flow of this traffic, where you can come in, if there's a space, you can get in quickly. If there is no space, you can go out. And then this extra area for 2 or 3 delivery trucks to be out of this circulation so they can drop off packages for the residents or deliveries to the frame shop or whatever's going on there was really important. So the most important consideration was keeping this commercial public parking lot viable, and the ramp idea killed that idea. So either you have retail on the first floor, which the city is requiring us to do, or not. So that's why we threw that out. We appreciated John Noble's work on it, but the geometry wasn't there to implement it. The next idea, which I was excited about actually, was to put a garage door that's just the size of a 500-pound dumpster, place it right here on Highland, and then have a new garage and exit here that would take up this green space for the residents to get out. When we brought Rumpke to look at this situation, they said, we got 3 problems with this. Number one, the elevation of your garage is at this grade, and it's easy to roll something out from the trash room right to a truck. You have to tell me how I'm going to get a guy to push the dumpster up to this level here on the corner, which is 3 feet, and then somehow manhandle a 500-pound dumpster on a hillside. How am I going to control that on the sidewalk and then on the street to get it on my truck? And you have to do a curb cut here. If it's snowing, I'm not going to pick it up because it could be icy, and the elevation of this hillside is not going to allow me to do trash pickup there. So then we started to study, okay, what if the truck came down into the neighborhood further? And again, as you get from here to here, the elevation goes up again. So we got a problem with this exit going out this way because it makes it very difficult to get a person to get a dumpster up to the truck. And it also eliminates a lot of visitor parking, which was one of the other concerns of the neighborhood. The other idea that we studied, which was eliminated by the traffic report, was having the garage exit here. That was deemed unsafe because of the proximity to the other intersections and the fact that these people are coming up from 3 feet in a car and they're coming out on the sidewalk and trying to figure out if their kid's coming down that sidewalk or not, and getting their nose up on the sidewalk so they can see up and down the street to get out. So that was eliminated by the city traffic engineers. And so we really did study this. It's not like I don't want to make the neighbors happy. And so the idea of giving up another piece of the real estate to make sure that the truck that comes in here can go quickly into the woodland, back up to here, get out of the traffic, because right now the truck, you can't get through to the street when the truck's in. You have to wait for the guy to pick up all the trash before you can get around the truck. That won't be the case here. You'll be able to back in here, pick it up, be out of anybody's way, and then quickly exit the street. So again, I don't want to show you all these illustrations. I can pull them up if you want to see them, but we studied them very closely and we took them seriously and tried to figure out how to make this work for everybody. And again, my projects, 2 of our buildings in Marymount are Cross River Elementary School. There's been no incidents, any accidents. We're good. The people that are in these buildings have grandkids and they're very cautious. So anyway, I think it'd be a shame to get into a long protracted debate about this because this is a commercial district. There's an existing commercial business that's been here for years. It generates trips every day, and it's been there forever. The CBD district has not changed. It's been here forever, including this business right here. So it's more of a residential neighbor than a commercial neighbor.
Anyone else out here? Yes, over there.
Brad Fennell. I'm 55 years old. Spent all 55 years here in Fort Thomas. Reside at 58 Miami Parkway. I grew up at 25 Crow Hill, less than a quarter mile from this location. Spent most of my summer days and nights creating havoc at those very places you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. 30 years in the real estate appraisal and consulting business. Last 25 of these at the very corner, 3 North Fort Thomas Avenue. I'm currently serving my 5th term on your local school board, so I am the subject matter expert on Judy and the traffic. Trust me. You probably should go to school board meetings instead and complain about the traffic. The traffic is bad now, and it will be bad moving forward regardless. During my tenure on the school board, I've been intricately involved in building or rebuilding of all 5 of our new or soon-to-be new schools. So while I may not appear as a disinterested third party, I can assure you I have the knowledge and my heart and soul belong to this wonderful town. With all due respect to some of those who came before me up here today and last meeting, we cannot rest on our laurels forever. Change is inevitable. And my experience has been better to be out in front of this than left behind. With or without this development, this area is going to change. I can see 4 bank buildings from my office windows. One we know has already closed. Trust me, they are the first domino. Banks don't want or need this large standalone infrastructure anymore. Repurposing these buildings would be expensive, difficult, and unsightly. This area will change. The homes, while beautiful and purposeful in their day, have exceeded their economic life. They no longer contribute value to the site. In essence, they are more valuable as vacant land than as improved with old dysfunctional residences sitting 50 feet off the road in a central business district zone. They do not now and never will work in a CBD. A CBD requires a streetscape, walkability, congruency, storefronts with visibility, and in cities like ours, a mixed-use approach is the highest and best use. There is a reason our current leaders and previous leadership adjusted our comprehensive plan over the years. This area was once zoned residential. 25 years ago when I purchased it was PO, professional office. Now it's central business district. Rick and his leadership team are perfectly positioned to do this right. They are tested and proven in communities, not exactly like ours, but with many similarities. I think this fact should be obvious when we consider how diligent Rick has been in reaching out to all of us and listening and reacting to our concerns. I respect your opinions and your concerns, but I promise you, this is unique. You don't get this everywhere. This area is a dead zone. I've lived it every day for 25 years. We need a CBD that provides a reason to go up there, a destination location. Are we such a group of elitists that we don't want others to come and enjoy the fruits of our town? I'm not that way. It's a different world today. I want to meet new people. I want to invite others to come in and enjoy and appreciate our town. They're doing this every day when they buy these old dilapidated houses, fix them up, and enroll their kids in our schools. Let's create a culture in our CBD that we get it, we're with it. This is not just an awesome place to buy a home, raise your family, and send them to our schools, but an awesome place all around to live, to play, to work in some cases, but more than anything, to enjoy and enjoy each other's company. It's my opinion, both personal and professional, that this development is a game changer for our town. A game changer either way. This development team is a proven commodity. Real estate stigma is a real thing. If we don't open our minds and work with them, in my professional opinion, we run the risk of becoming stigmatized. Fort Thomas is not open for business. And maybe that is the way some of you would like it. I personally would caution you and say, be careful what you wish for. As we hear often these days, we are more alike than we are not alike. We want the same things. I want my town to continue to be vibrant, to be a special place. That's why I've spent half my life on the school board. Thankless job, I might add. And that's why I'm here tonight. That is exactly what we don't have in our CBD. And in the center of town. God love those businesses that continue to give it a go. In conclusion, I ask you to seize the day. Don't miss this opportunity. Work with these proven developers, follow your comprehensive plan, and build us an anchor property that we will all be proud of for many years to come. Thank you.
My name is Laura Reynolds. I live at 9 Woodland Place. My driveway is the one you see directly across from the garage entrance, or the proposed garage entrance currently. I would like to debate the location of that because I think the safety of our children is at stake if we allow this to happen. If you guys are willing to go against what our comprehensive plan states, that we should be protected on Woodland from this garage entrance. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I am there most days when kids walk to and from school, and I will echo what Neil said, that many children do use Woodland Place, going both to Moyer and to Highlands. I think foot traffic is going to only increase with this development, not only with construction, but with the development itself. There's already been several near misses at that intersection because people carelessly turn around there. And I would just like to say to you that if you guys allow this, then you are allowing our children to be at risk. I will say that I'm in favor of the development. We bought that house because we like being close to the town center. We just don't like our kids being at risk.
Thank you. Yes, Becker.
Hello, my name is Jack Meyer. I live at 53 Lonely Avenue. But unfortunately, I don't have an eloquent presentation like the previous speakers, but I don't think I've heard anyone say they're against development on that area. I think what I'm hearing is that they're not for this particular development. Everybody's correct. Something has to happen to keep the city alive. I do have a few questions, however.
Can't hear you.
I do have a few questions, however. Thank you. Normally people don't say that. Basically, I'd like to start with the most difficult question first, and I'd like to address Mr. Greiwe. Sir, do you intend to request any TIF funding?
There's a great tool for economic development in Kentucky called industrial revenue bonds. And your city council and school board approved the use of those right behind us here for Apple Circle. It made the project feasible. And there's some bigger projects that you're all familiar with that have been announced in Campbell County that those bonds are being used as well. And the way it works is, in this particular example, the 18 condo owners have to pay taxes. And they're going to be homes that will be between $650 and $1.1 million, and they'll be paying real estate taxes. What the RB does is you capture those taxes for 15 years, and you can use them to lower your cost of your project, which we want to do so we can introduce a new product here that is acceptable. And so when people pay their real estate taxes, they pay off the bonds, and once the bonds are paid off, the community's whole, and they have a $25 million asset that's generating new real estate taxes that it never did before. So the schools are earning more money, the counties are earning more money, the cities are earning more money, and this is what's the case of other communities we worked in. So that's what IRB is used for, and it's been a very effective way to attract developers because these sites are expensive to assemble, they're expensive to build, and we're trying to create new space in a town that has old space, so that's why they're used.
So do I understand correctly that the city and the schools won't see any benefit from the taxes until after the bonds are paid off?
The school is required to get a portion regardless, and then you negotiate how much, but they get something right away. Yeah. And the county and the city can negotiate whether they want some of it as well. Thank you.
And to the architect, I was just curious as to why the deviation from the facade of the standalone retail building varies from the mass.
This is actually probably a response to the community. Last time, there was a lot of talk, and the design review board, where it was mentioned that this was monolithic or monotone. And so we wanted to create some range, and that range kind of naturally occurs when you have two completely different buildings. One is completely commercial, and the other one is a mixed-use building. So it seems like that is a great tool. I think the changes improve the project, in my opinion, but it's up to you as a person to determine what you think.
Have any specific retail restaurants, anything like that, been pursued or planning to be pursued?
We haven't done any formal agreements with anybody, but we've gotten calls from a financial planning organization, a bank that has no drive-through, a clothier, men's clothier. You heard Jennifer Sierra, we'd love to start an art gallery and a framing shop. And then, there's a lot of new formats for restaurants that would be designed so it's a community gathering place with a lot of outdoor dining and a price range that would be acceptable to families. So we don't know who that is, we just came up with this concept a couple weeks ago. So David, once he knows this is approved, will then work to go out and recruit people, get them to sign leases. And he's been willing to buy the commercial space, which is a relief to us because that's what he does. He's an expert at it, and we know how to do condos, so it's a good partnership. And there's other people that express an interest to buy it too. So we have 2 or 3 candidates that would own it, lease it, make sure it stays full, make sure it's maintained properly, and be an exciting mix for the residents, not just the people who have to live with the above.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Yes.
My name is Lisa Adams. I live at 5 Woodland Place. I live on the corner of Woodland and Highland. And my house, like the Reynolds, is the most impact house to the development. And I would agree, there has always been a commercial presence on our street in that area, but there has not been a street in that area. Because when you put 18 residential homes in that building with twice the amount of cars for 18 residents, you've created a street onto our street. We're used to 25 residential homes with 50 cars going in and out of our street. We are not used to now 36 more cars coming out, creating a new street. And it's not just the street, think about what it's gonna be like at night. I have a street now in front of my house. And what's at the end of the street at night but street lights? There are already streetlights there. Now they're gonna have to add streetlights for the garage, because if you're over 60 and you wanna find your garage at night or your street, you need a light. So I'm concerned about the now streetlights, the additional lights that are gonna be happening right there. It's gonna be a great American ballpark in front of my house with all the lights. I welcome a development. I am not opposed to a development. I think it's phenomenal that we're doing something with a dead space. I'm just not liking a street in front of my house and all the traffic that involves and what it does to my property value and to my peace of mind at night in my kitchen, and there's 50 cars shining their lights into my house at all hours of the day. And I know the people that are in favor of this don't live there. And everyone that has mentioned it, she doesn't even know what street I live on. And she talks about her frame business and she can't even remember Woodland Place. That's where we live. This is affecting us, our homes, our livelihoods, our investments that we've made into our homes, and our investments that we've made into Fort Thomas. We want that development to complement our neighborhood, not bring more traffic and commercialize a residential street. Thank you.
First, I did want to start by thanking the Design Review Board. At the meeting on April the 25th, the public wasn't permitted to speak, that wasn't the forum, but the Design Review Board really reiterated a lot of the things that had been said at the meeting just the week before, so I do thank them for that. Along with that, I want to give a shout out to Rick Greiwe, who seemed to do some listening as well. Not everything has been addressed, but there have been some changes, and I think that brings us a little bit closer to thinking maybe something feasible, will come from the discussions. I do believe we deserve to be heard, and I'm not 100% for or 100% against. I'm starting to lean toward, maybe some development, maybe not that, I don't know. But anyway, there are some things that I had some questions. One, with the retail businesses, I'm curious if they will be mandated to stay open a certain length of time each day. Do they have to be open until 9 at night? Do they close at 5? Will we be rolling up the carpet, at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock at night? Will they be open on Sundays? I'm just curious if we're going to be drawing people to try to shop there. Do you have to shop during working hours when people are working? So that's just a little curiosity. Another thing is about the parking, especially the on-street parking. Will there be plans to do a 2-hour limit? You can only park there for 2 hours. In which case, the restaurant, I think, could have some issues with that. If you decide you want to shop in the shops and eat at the restaurant, your 2 hours are up and done. You can't park there. If you don't have the 2-hour limit, do the students park there, which is just a little hop to get to the high school? And then there's no parking for the businesses. Same goes with Friday night events, football games, etc. If they have unlimited parking up there, those spots are going to be taken by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, perhaps even right after school that people go meet up for the football game later. So our street the parking is used, and is used quite often at for long lengths of time at each parking. Another thing, this didn't come up to me until this evening. I should have counted, but I didn't. How many times the planning committee has stated that they have latitude to override the zoning requirements? The zoning requirements are the zoning requirements, over and over and over, but the planning committee has latitude to override the request for zoning changes. I don't get it. I don't get it. Why do we have zoning if a small group can say, it doesn't really matter, zoning doesn't really matter. Requirements and limitations and things, we can override it. On variance to the street, on height requirement, on access, on width of access, entry and exit. I don't get it. If we have the requirements, shouldn't we abide by the requirements? Some of the other things that have kind of confused me, and I was at the April 17th meeting here in the mess hall and heard Rick Greiwe say the space is being designed for empty nesters from Fort Thomas who want to remain in Fort Thomas. I was, a week later at the Design Review Board meeting where Mr. Greiwe said, we hope to market these condos to people in Triple Crown. Now, they're probably great people, I have no issue with that, but which one is it? Do we want Triple Crown to move here, or do we want the Fort Thomas residents to stay here? Seems conflicting. He also mentioned that the meeting on the 17th, this will be great for older citizens who want to downsize. Later that same night, he said younger people currently living in OTR will want to move here when their kids get a little bit older and they want to go to the schools. Well, is it for the empty nesters or is it for the school parents? Can't quite tell. On the 17th, he said, we will work with the residents of Woodland to address their concerns. Later in that same night, and I wrote it down, the suggestions the residents made are just not feasible for this project. So back to what Kelsey said, a lot of it is feeling sort of more like a done deal, more of a done deal than I would hope that it would be. To that point, I've got the name written down here, I think I do. At the Design Review Board meeting, it was, I don't know the name. Somebody brought up, I do have it. Much like Kelsey was saying, a done deal. At the April 17th meeting, Rick Greiwe said, we will only move forward if we find general consensus of approval from the citizens. I can't see anybody disagreeing with that. The April 25th meeting, Kevin Barbian stood right there, addressed the thing with the quote, it's too late to change at this point. The planning committee has put too much time in on this project to stop now. Kelsey said done deal. Sounds like Kevin Barbian said, Kelsey's right, it's a done deal. Something else, I don't know, is Mr. Birdsall still here? No. He's not? He's the one with 360 Property Partners, talking about the retail space, the retail needs. How many times tonight did I hear say they just would like a nice coffee shop? Has anybody been to Fort Thomas Coffee? I mean, what are we trying to do to what I think is a nice coffee shop to say we need a nice coffee shop? I want Mr. Birdsall to also know we have a dry cleaner, 3 banks, a coffee shop, plus a Starbucks, a women's clothing store, a quilting and fabric store, a florist, a dry cleaner, a furniture store, more than 1 barber, several hair salons, an ice cream shop, a pharmacy, several investment counselors, several attorney offices, a veterinarian office, a home decor and accessory shop, a sandwich shop with both indoor and outdoor seating, as well as a Subway franchise with indoor and outdoor seating, a children's clothing store, a specialty pet store for food and accessories, a gourmet spice store with an attached restaurant, several other restaurants, plus several bars. I don't know if I'm missing something, but what is Fort Thomas missing? And if you're looking for a place to congregate and shop, right on Highland Avenue has many of those that I just mentioned. The sandwich shop, the Cobblestone, the Diamonds and Dimples clothing boutique, Faded Finds, Monera. All of these shops are right there. Ample parking, free parking, easy access, no traffic. I mean, I don't know what could be there that wouldn't put one of these businesses I just mentioned out of business. Someone mentioned an empty bank being the downfall, or step 1 of the decline of a city. In talking with, his name escapes me now, the pharmacist at Fort Thomas Drug Center, he approached the bank, he wanted to buy that building, have that as his pharmacy with a drive-up window. That is awesome for Fort Thomas. Fort Thomas would love a drive-up window in that nice little easy, quick turnaround to get their pharmacy supplies. I think that would have been a super go. And I think we're going to be leveling that. At the the design review board, the question was asked, what's the buffer going to be between the parking lot and Woodland Place? And Rick Greiwe said, it's going to be really nice. We're going to have bamboo and honeysuckle. Tonight, he said, we're getting rid of all that bamboo and honeysuckle. Well, it was proposed as a really awesome thing. I did a little bit of, I talked to a friend who happens to have had an issue with a property line, and the attorney advised, put up bamboo. They'll move before you'll get rid of the bamboo. You'll have to live with the bamboo, but that stuff will take over his property and he'll be gone. He suggested that is if you want to be a really bad neighbor, plant bamboo. So I heard on April 25th, we're planting bamboo. I heard tonight they're getting rid of the bamboo and the honeysuckle. So I'm not sure, but it seems as if there's some decisions that have been said, this is what it is, and suddenly it's not. Glad that there's a restaurant with outdoor seating. That's something we weren't going to have that now you're saying we will. So some changes can be positive, but it's concerning. I think in hearing, as I said, Mr. Barbian say, we spent too much time on this. Sometimes time is good to take some more. I don't think there's a deadline to say if we don't, start shoveling by 4th of July, the whole thing is going to go down the tubes. It was encouraging to me as a citizen to hear people say, I understand there'll be development. I'm just not sure about this development. I'm just not sure about this. The mammoth size has been reduced a little bit, but it was interesting to just hear the last speaker say, you're putting a street at the end of my street, and that's kind of a spooky thing. I feel bad for Woodland. I mean, their property values have really gone down. I mean, even, pardon me? Oh, of course I am. As are you, that they would go. Absolutely not. Common sense. Have you driven on Woodland in quite some time? Well, that's fine. Then don't. And that's what we're doing.
Focus over here, if you would.
Pardon me?
Focus.
Well, he was the one addressing me.
Crosstalk, I think.
He was the one that addressed me. He apologized.
Mr. Chairman, let Kevin and the staff respond to planning commission overriding zoning. That's not what was said. It's about using latitude within the zoning code. And that's up to you to respond to that. I just want to respond to the things that were misunderstood. Again, to clarify, tonight, I said that the area buffer is full of bamboo and honeysuckle and the residents of that. And so we will be taking that out and saving the one or two nice trees that are back here and putting in pine trees, bushes, and other attractive material that will make this a nice looking gateway to the community, as well as buffer lights, headlights. There'll be a little berm here, so there'll be no ambient light coming from cars coming through here. And then there's a 25-foot buffer, and then the city owns an easement right here that we will also plant as well. And so there'll be 35 feet buffer throughout here, and then it narrows down to 25. Then the second issue, the target audience for this project is 60 above. It's empty nesters, it's seniors, and I've said before, and I'll say it again, that the target audience is people who want to stay here. That's what's happened in Marymount. Senior citizens who wanted to stay where their kids were, and they're moving back to Marymount from Florida because they want their kids to take care of them. So, but there's also empty nesters from around Cincinnati that love Marymount. And so the reference to Triple Crown was a reference that there might be some other empty nesters or seniors that would like to live in Fort Thomas. But it's targeted to area residents as well as our local residents. So we hope to sell 18 units to do that. kids from over the Rhine, I said that people love over the Rhine that are young people, they're millennials, they're walking to the coffee shop, the donut shop. Their values is to be in a walkable community with a retail. And they're gonna look to where they're gonna go, because they're gonna have kids. They're gonna go to Mariemont, they're gonna go to Fort Thomas, they're gonna go to Wyoming, where all the best school districts are. That's where they're gonna go. And you have a competitive edge if you have an attractive CBD where people can do the same things they used to do in over the Rhine. Hang out in a coffee shop, you know, buy some things and can walk to some place with their kids. So again, kids will want to buy your houses here. You got great houses, great housing stock, great schools. So the seniors who want to sell their house can sell their house to these kids from over the Rhine, and then they can move in here. So it's all a nice cycle. So that's why I said about over the Rhine. I just want to clarify that too. Okay.
Yes, there's a gentleman
My name is Michelle Knight. I live on Woodland Place. I want to echo the sentiments of my neighbors who've spoken before me that I have some grave concerns about the development because of the detrimental effect that it's going to have on our neighborhood specifically. But I also have concerns about it affecting our community as a whole, because I'm not so sure that we really want the traffic that you know, a lot of people have spoke of bringing. I didn't move here for the party. I moved here for the schools. I moved here because it is a bucolic neighborhood. I moved here because I can walk to the park. I moved here because I can walk my dog and I can, you know, take walks with my son. I can run. It's a safe neighborhood. I don't have to worry about congestion. You know, it's a great way to live. We talk about it. We want this to be some city center. I would hope that you would stop and think about that. You know, no, we're not elitist, and we don't want to keep people out of our neighborhood. But you know, I don't want to live in Bellevue. I didn't move to Bellevue. I moved to Fort Thomas. I want to live in Newport. I want to live in over the Rhine. I want to live in Fort Thomas, and I want it to be a great neighborhood. And I do love the community. I do love the community aspect of you know, hanging out and drinking coffee at Fort Thomas Coffee, which I love. I take my dry cleaning to Schrader's. My pharmacy is the Fort Thomas Drug Center. You know, I use all of the local businesses, and I'm not enough to sustain them, and nor are you, because they continue to go out of business because we can't sustain them. How are we going to sustain any kind of retail that's going to come in here unless we bring in folks from the outside? And when we do that, we're an island. We don't have even the turnaround effect of this parking lot here, right? We get an in and an out. You don't get that in Fort Thomas. You don't get to come in and out. Nobody drives through Fort Thomas. People come to Fort Thomas for a reason. We don't have 50 running through our town, right? Mariemont enjoys that. People can stop by on their way. People can stop by on their way through Hyde Park. People can stop by on their way through Montgomery or on their way to another place. No one stops here on their way anywhere. You come here for a purpose because we're an island. I love the place. I want to remain here. I don't want my value, the value of my home, to be reduced because of a development that wasn't thought out carefully. I'm not opposed to the development. I'm opposed to what I am not hearing. What I don't understand is how are we going to sustain the retail? Because let's call it what it is. The money's going to be made on the residential. The money is going to be made on the condo units. That's where the money's going to be made. We don't have a zoning code that allows us to say who can and cannot rent. And in fact, we're going to hire someone else to come in and tell us who's going to rent this, who's going to buy these spaces, who's going to be there, okay? UDF will fight, kill, and die to get a corner spot. Are we going to tell them no? Or are we going to bring them in with open arms? Do we really want a UDF in Fort Thomas? CVS, Walgreens, right? What about those? Who are we going to tell no to? Can we tell them no? No, we can't. We can't tell them no. You know who else we can't tell no to? Anyone who wants to buy the condos. A Target market is great, but you can't drive the Target market. You're going to get what you get. You can't say that you're going to only sell to this one or that one. So
while it's a good plan, how are we gonna execute on the plan when we don't have any protections in place, nor could we in terms of who we can sell to, but especially on the leasing part. Let's say, the fodder on Facebook, Starbucks. We have a Starbucks. We also have a Fort Thomas Coffee. Go ahead, bring in a Starbucks. See how fast Fort Thomas Coffee closes down. Thank you, we've just run out of local residents. If you read anything about strong towns, if you read anything about what it takes for a sustainable development, it's what it takes for a sustainable development in a small town is it takes infrastructure that is from within. It takes organic growth. It takes people who live here renting those spaces and having a vested interest in that. It takes the people of Woodland Place going up to Fort Thomas Public House every week because we don't want it to close. We want to be there. It takes saying, hey, Dave's daughter plays soccer for Highlands. We go watch her play. We're also going to stop by the public house and we're going to buy a pizza on the way. We're going to frequent these places because these are our neighbors. We're not going to frequent UDF because they're not our neighbors. We're not going to frequent places that don't provide us with that feel of that organic growth, that reason, that sustainability, right? It's not going to happen unless we feel that connection, unless we have that connection. And so we don't have a way, and I asked this in our the committee meetings that I participated in over the summer. I asked, really, what is the purpose of the zoning community committee? What was the purpose, if not to say, do we have a zoning plan? Do we have rules in place that prevent us from bringing in an art gallery and putting a frame shop out of business? Do we have something that says, we already have a really great cafe in Cobblestone. We're not going to bring something in that's going to bring people away from that. Do we have anything in place? How are we going to manage that? So those questions that I have about that is really what drives the grave concerns that I have about the development. I want it to succeed, but the cost per square foot on the rental on that lower commercial level is not going to be what it is across the street. And so if people want to move into that, because it's a nice new space, they're going to pay for it. I'm for the development. Can't say that enough. I have concerns about how we're going to sustain the retail space. I have concerns about who we're bringing into town, the masses, because again, it's not that we want to keep people out, it's that, do we really want that traffic? Is that who we're trying to be? And so, in making the decision tonight, I would hope that you think about these points and you think about who it is that's going to renting that retail space. You bring in, a commercial chain, you've ruined our neighborhood, absolutely ruined it, and that's on you. So think about it before you make these decisions, and I would like some answers about how we're going to protect our current businesses in town that have been with us for a while and are struggling. We don't even offer them tax, I don't think we offer any tax abatements at all. And so what are we doing for them? It seems like we're planning for the future, but we're not doing anything for our current residents and our current businesses to make sure that we're not detriment, that this development isn't a detriment to us. So the questions really I want answered are, what are we going to do about the retail space, and how are we going to rent that, and how are we going to control to whom we rent it to?
Those are really good questions, and the first one you asked, and I think it's the most important one, is what are the kind of businesses that people who live here are going to support? Because they know the owner, they are almost committed to make sure it's a success. And those are the kind of people we have to recruit. And when Jennifer Sierra got up here and talked about her vision for an art gallery and a framing shop with community event space, that's the kind of thinking that we want to put into this thing. We want to put people out of business, all right? And, if I I could paint a picture, it'd be great to get the coffee shop owner to partner with, Coffee Emporium and do something really neat. Where you could have food and things that would extend the hours through lunch and have things to do in the coffee shop that would be different than just what they're doing now. So again, we have to think through all these things, they have to be right, but the control is this. If I'm gonna put condos that are very expensive upstairs, I'm gonna have HOI documents that list the kind of businesses that are gonna be in there. There isn't gonna be any UDFs, there's not gonna be anything that's gonna affect my ability to sell a condo. So this space in this part of the building is really gonna be curated very carefully. It's gotta be something that if I live above, I'm gonna say, wow, I'm really excited to walk downstairs and take advantage of that, like you would a pool at an apartment complex. I want to live here because these businesses are here. And then over here, this whole idea of having a sit-down restaurant, which is the biggest important thing in your comprehensive plan, that's a huge win if we can find the right operator that has some kind of ties to this community, because you only have a few restaurants here. This would be a huge attraction for people that live here, and it'd be supported by people who live here if it was the right operator. So again, this is going to have all kinds of restrictions on what kind of commercial space. This will have office above. This will probably have a mix of office, which brings people to your business district during the day, so they buy food and buy pharmacy things. They use your downtown because you have people working here too. So envision half of this being office, another part of it being retail food, and that will be very well controlled by the condo docs. And as far as controlling who lives above, you can't do that unless you want to get sued. But they're going to be people who have lots of money, okay? They know you buy a house that's over $650,000. Now, who they are, what shape they are, where they're from, I can't control that.
Okay. Got time for a couple more because I want to move forward to the next phase of this evening. With this gentleman back hallway, I guess we'll red.
Hi, I'm Mark Lancaster. I live over on 7 Summit. My daughter spends money on North Fort Thomas as she goes back and forth between schools, so I support indirectly a lot of business along the way. Looking at the commercial space, that seems to look and fit the character of Fort Thomas just by the sketch that's provided on there. Of course, the devil's in the details, but that looks reasonable. The issue that I think really needs to be addressed because of Live One Place, you don't want to have a street full of people who will never go to your property to shop or anywhere because you have completely cheesed them off and ran them off, essentially. So it looks like that the biggest issue on this really is the combination of commercial and, residential and commercial space all being targeted together, trying to make something to work. If you have 4 or 5 commercial properties, completely forget about the residential aspects. You don't have the underground parking garage anymore. You don't have any of the issues with trash collection. You don't have any issues with an exit going out the street on a street. And you recover very nice modern storefronts that probably could attract the additional $10 per square foot that it would command on there. And you could probably find complementary businesses to what's currently in place. So I would humbly suggest that this mixed use thing is probably too much for that area. The last thing that I want to ask is, for the Fort Thomas residents, how many people over 60 are going to essentially retire to a property that's between $650 and $1.1 million? If you have the money. So I'm not sure if there's going to be any Fort Thomas residents in these properties. I would guess maybe one or two. So we're going to get people of all walks and types, which is fine. That's what you get when you put residential properties up for sale. But we're not going to get, I think, the target group on here, just gut feeling. But for commercial properties, if we have 4 or 5 nice storefronts that look like the one that's in the yellow, I think that could work. They're the right size, they work very nicely with the Sure Design building, and they sort of fit the character that we're looking for. So I'll go ahead and stop here, and thank you all very much.
Hi, I'm Tom Lampy, 37 Covert Place, former city council member and current county commissioner. So I have spent a number of years in local government. I really enjoy local government. I don't like politics, but I really enjoy government. And I kind of want to start or talk a little bit about a more foundational issue than whether I like these drawings or whether I like the retail that they have planned for there. I looked at the original chart, and it really comes down to me something fundamental as personal property rights, which are very sacred, valued rights that we have. If Mr. Greiwe's company is able to acquire the property, it's zoned an acceptable use based on the zoning that you guys will decide. I don't have to tell you this. You don't have to like the drawings. You got to just figure out whether this is an acceptable use. And I have to compliment Mr. Greiwe. I personally don't think this is a done deal. If this was a done deal, he wouldn't have made the changes and alterations he did after hearing input from the residents back in April. So I want to thank you for doing that. Also, we, as government, Ron doesn't know anything about operating a spice shop or anything like that. The primary role of government is to provide the safety, the police and fire, and the infrastructure to make our community inviting to businesses and residences. Aside from that, we got wonderful volunteers that work, we really appreciate your service. But in terms of that, we got the laws in place. If he's adhering to that, I think we've got a wonderful opportunity. I'm amazed at how accommodating he was and how considerate he's been of our community. The changes you made were phenomenal. And his group has taken on the risk. He's got the risk of filling the residences. He has the risk of filling the retail. We're not going to tell him who to bring in and who not to bring in. That's on his dime. And we as a group, I think, have supported the local businesses. We're on our fourth pizza place we've supported at the one location. It's not conducive, as Brad Fennell mentioned before, to retail these days. I think Rick's group, if you haven't noticed, is a little different horsepower. I think he has the power, the connections, and the thing to make this thing successful. I just ask you all to take your job seriously. I know you do, and really just make the right decision, make a good decision based on what you're empowered to do. So I want to thank Rick for his time on this.
We're going to move ahead after this.
Okay, I'll make this real quick. For those of you, I have a business in Fort Thomas that I just opened last September. And about a year and a half ago, I was actually brainstorming with my husband, what doesn't Fort Thomas have, as this lovely lady had mentioned earlier. I actually opened a med spa in Fort Thomas. It's Skin Esteem. Some of y'all might have heard of it. But to me, as a business owner, looking for, something new, maybe a little bit more relevant, might go to Newport, you know, Bellevue, but I do love my city of Fort Thomas, and I love supporting our local businesses, and I'm local. So I would love to move my business into a place like this. A spa is something that we don't have. I do have a broad, long-term vision of what it could be. Multimodal, all the way to, you know, hormone therapy, weight loss, to, you know, sports medicine, something that could be maybe less multimodal and just, you know, take up maybe more of the spaces under one umbrella. So I just wanted to let you guys know that there are people who are interested in these businesses. I can't speak to the people on Woodland Place, and I definitely appreciate what you all are going through and your input. And if I lived on that street, I would have the same concerns. So if this is not about, you know, the size or the residents so much as it is just speaking to the business aspect as to what it can draw to Fort Thomas. And that's all. That was my 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move off as open forum. We're going to move to a discussion here. We've been doing this for an hour and a half. I think I've heard everything I'm going to hear. Okay. We're going to hear the discussion here. You guys are welcome to stay here. But before we get to that, a lot of what we were brought up tonight or heard isn't something this commission handles. We have a list of businesses that can go into a facility. We have nothing to do with the relationship between the city and the developer on the funding. So I just turn out. Parking usually gets down to the city level as far as 2-hour parking, 1-hour parking, 30 minutes. That's something that happens at council level. So we don't even do that. Number of parking places, yes. This is a central business development element. 15 years ago, we could not even have entertained thinking about this because our rules were so strict. Parking, size, a lot of things were just so cut and dry. We couldn't entertain anything to happen in the center of Fort Thomas because, as you all know, we're kind of on a ridge. We don't have the luxury of a flat piece of property, a lot of parking places, things like that. So that's why Central Business District, business districts on each end were created, and there's latitude allowed this board and some of the things that happen at council level. We actually will make a recommendation to council, but they can say, if they want to, they haven't. Because most of the time, they know we are the expert on these documents that we've spent so much time with and learned inside and out. So, like I say, you guys are welcome to sit here and listen. This will probably be a dialogue now between commission members, staff, back and forth. Whether we actually get to a resolution, a vote, I couldn't tell you right now. So I'm going to go from there. Yes, Ian?
I would suggest that you have a show of hands of anybody who wants to talk to Cassie. And I think they have to be given an opportunity to speak.
I will let them talk if they can hold the 2 minutes because we have already been going almost 2 hours. And I hope it's not the same thing. Okay, that.
I appreciate that everyone's been sitting here for 2 hours. I have too, and I've had my hand raised about 15 times. So I think I can try and rein it into 2 minutes, but now I'm angry, so hopefully I can get that under control and make it concise. My name's Andrea Bunch, I live at 32 Mayfield Avenue. One of the things that I'm concerned about this evening, very quickly, when I was first married, we had a water salesman, a water system salesman come to our door. And wow, if we were gonna just jump on this tonight, we could have this great water system and only at this sale price, but we better jump on it tonight. So that's one of my fears, is rushing to judgment on the plans. You know, as much thought as possible should be given. One of the Woodland Place residents earlier talked about something that to me seems kind of like the tail wagging the dog. It's all about how this affects the retail parking, how this affects the retail space, but not about how it's affecting the residents. And I agree that there have been some concessions made, but again, the Woodland Place residents were there first, so I think that should be a big consideration, not the other way around, not those residents making their world revolve around the retail, but vice versa. Also, to allude to something that was mentioned earlier, again and again it's been mentioned the latitude that the commission has as far as number of parking spaces, etc., doubling up on parking spaces for different times of day. It has not been mentioned how that doubling up affects current businesses and residents along the avenue. So are we really tripling up those parking spaces if those concessions are to be made? And once you start making so many concessions, is that really going to be a viable situation? Are people going to not come because they can't park? Yes, there's parking behind the Highland Theater building, but not everybody who has a stroller or has any kind of ambulatory issues is going to be able to use that parking. So maybe that sounds great on paper, but where are people really going to park? Another question I would like to ask, people have been talking about the done deal concept. So what are the stages of approval? How many stages are there before it does become a done deal? There's been a lot of reference to stage 2. I don't know that everybody in this room knows what that is, so that would be educational for everybody. Again, I'm sorry I just butted in front of somebody else, but I did have my hand raised about 15 times. I have been here all evening, and I think everybody who wanted an opportunity to speak should have been given that opportunity. So again, I'll reiterate what some other people have said. I hope it is a wise decision. I hope there aren't so many concessions made just to get this sort of bright, shiny new development that we're overlooking the good of the community.
I'm Sean Hopper. I live on 67 Bivouac, and I was happy to give you the time because I came late, and you had your hand up long before I was even here, so I'm glad we got a chance to speak. Frankly, glad that everybody got a chance. This seemed to be a lot of time spent in public discourse, so I can appreciate the amount of time everybody's been spending on this. My wife and I have been here 20 years, and I guess as I was listening to everybody, I sort of was reflecting on my journey to Fort Thomas. I came from originally a small town in Ohio where the community absolutely didn't support any development. And as a young man, I remember hearing my parents talk about how they were stranded in their house, right? Because they couldn't afford to move. You know, the one store we had left had a quarter inch of dust on the bread, so we would drive 10 minutes over to another store in another town. That town wasn't Fort Thomas, it's not apples and oranges, but that's a memory I had as a kid. That when my wife and I moved to Dallas, Texas for work, we purposefully looked to buy homes in the areas, suburbs of that big town that were similar to this town, specifically where we knew development was happening, and what we saw was our property values increased dramatically every time. When the time came to have a family, we wanted to come back to where we were from. We shortlisted all the towns you could think of that could equal Fort Thomas, and chose this town because of its proximity to downtown, obviously the schools, some relationships we had in the area. Based on pros and cons, Fort Thomas wins that argument for most people that are moving here that aren't from here. You know, we're both transients, and when we shortlisted all these towns, Fort Thomas made the short list. I'd say the biggest disappointment while we've lived here is the lack of this sort of space. Now, over the last few years, we've noticed in the southern business district, they seem to have gotten their act together, right? I can't remember everything Fort Thomas Pizza was for the time we lived here. I kind of remember Bowers and Lions. There were like 12 other things before that. And we tried to support it just they always fail, but, I heard some angst about trying to fill the number of spaces and who's going to be here, and, what's happened in the southern side that we've noticed is now that there are, 4 or 5 viable businesses, and the parking over at the fort is available for public parking, and we actually need to do a better job of getting that word out. People don't really know that, but it's always booming over there, and those businesses are doing well, and that's what I see will likely happen here. You get a cluster of businesses, it becomes a destination. I think there's fewer concerns about whether or not the businesses will survive. Similar to the speaker two ago, I own a couple of small businesses, and I've got some interest in this space as well. And I'd say we're on the list of people that when my 3 kids finally cycle through this school district, and we need a place to live, but we no longer need a house the size of the one we have because it really needs to have a family and not 2 old folks. We're seriously interested in this. So I'm super happy that we've had a lot of chance to discuss this. I hope this happens, and I'm really looking forward to it.
My name's Clarissa Neese, and I live at 33 Woodland Place. So obviously we have been working with Mr. Greiwe, and Dan Gorman referenced it obviously last meeting as well, for quite a few years. And the last piece that I would like to have in mind as you guys go into your conversation, I'd like everyone on Woodland Place, would you mind just raise your hand a little bit? I'd like you to look at everyone. Please just take a moment and look at them. Because everyone, even everyone who has supported this particular effort, many of the people you see with their arms raised are very much in support of development in the CBD district. But you ask, what are the things that you do have the power to do? Mr. Greiwe has the power to tell us no for 2 years straight on the impact this is going to have to our community. And everyone who even talked in support said, well, there's got to be compromises. So all the faces that you just looked at, those are the individuals that you're throwing under the bus with some of these efforts, particularly with, I think Lisa, you said it very well, the street that is essentially T-boning into our street. Our kids ride bikes, our neighbors' kids, our friends' kids ride bikes down Lodge Lane and end up down that street. And particularly, you do have the power to take a look at the buffer zones. There's lots of leeway, I think, as it was indicated. What are going to be those paths? Mr. Greiwe, thank you for considering a lot of those options. Options of going down the different angles. He was excited about it. We were excited about the possibilities of being able to slow the path for the traffic that's going through there. Rumkey did one, I don't know, go to $655,000 and put in a hydraulic lift and get that trash can out there to Highlands. I don't know what the solutions are. We're not, frankly, working for Mr. Greiwe or Mr. Gorman. We have been for 2 years trying to design new options, and we would just put it in your very capable hands, obviously, for you to really look at what do you have the power to protect the folks on Woodland Place, try to achieve some of those different pieces that we were suggesting, options. Maybe there are better options that haven't been considered yet, but you are the only ones. You are the only ones with your vote tonight that can force just one more round of revisions to try to address the issues between the connection between the commercial properties and the community immediately behind it. And as Neil said well, we really want to be considered a priority. We want to be considered that our lifelong commitments to the community and our investments in these properties do mean something, and that our children and all of the neighborhood properties that do flow through there do mean something, and it's not just about what's going to make things easier for the condo residents.
live right behind the trash dump that will be on the new parking lot. And my question is about the parking. Are the residents on Woodland Place going to be issued parking permits? Or is Woodland Place only going to be designated that you have to be a resident to park on Woodland Place? And the parking lot behind the new construction, is there going to be overnight parking, semi-parking? Are large commercial vehicles with reefers going to be parked there for 2, 3, and 4 o'clock in the morning to service the restaurants? What about those? That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right, we're going to move forward, like I say, to our planning commission discussion here. But one thing, yeah, we're going to close the public hearing, okay? But basically, you guys are silent, you're just listeners. We will be, as I say, touching base with other members back and forth, our staff, our administrative type of thing. I think one thing we always talk about is the developer pulled this off of the table because he heard a lot at the last meeting. This commission is not a commission that is charged with designing this. We are charged with evaluating it, if you would. We could either say yes, or we can say no. We can put some conditions on it, but we can't say, we just don't like it, you gotta go back and try again. It sounds like we've done a lot of iteration, way more than normal, because of the size of this project have happened between the developer and the budding residents. So, with that said, we will go to discussing the issue. I'd like to start with traffic with the commission people. We'll just try to knock them down. Anybody need any more clarification on the traffic, how it works? Are we?
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
I second.
Okay, we could do. Do we have a second?
I second.
All right, so we moved that we close the hearing and open forum part. All in favor? Aye. So order. Okay, traffic. Frank was great at giving us a whole lot of detail. And if I read through all the numbers, I'm not so sure. Frank, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there was anything that jumped out of the thing and said this is a red flag.
No.
He said no, sir. We can do that. One of my colleagues here suggests a 5-minute break. So we'll allow that. If I want to go to the restrooms or that way.